to the Wing Space podcast, a place to take up space, a space for you to settle in, sit back, relax, and focus a little bit on health, wellness, faith, family, and this crazy thing called life.
This podcast is not a replacement for mental health treatment or professional health care. In case of crisis or emergency, please contact your local healthcare provider or dial 911.
Hey there, and welcome to the Wing Space podcast, a place to take up space. We are rounding out our third season where we are taking some opportunities to sit down with local experts and community members, and I am excited to sit down today and talk with my brother, Brian Adkins. Brian, it's good to have you here.
Thank you. Thanks for having me, sis.
And while Brian is not currently a local community partner, obviously we were both born and raised here in St. Mary's counties. He's got lots to share with us today, and I'm excited to have a conversation. Maybe we can just start with you telling our audience a little bit about who you are and what you do, and we can jump into our topic on resilience.
Well, thanks for having me. You know, I've been listening to all your episodes on the podcast, and I'm very proud of what you have built there in St. Mary's County with Hope and Healing. And we'll talk about, some of my story, but, I've overcome quite a bit of self-induced trauma and pain throughout my life. And you've been witness to me, and outside of your capacity as a therapist and those things, you have a brother that went through some stuff. And I know that was painful for you to watch that and all those things. So I just want to say how proud I am that you're building what you've built there in St. Mary's County, and your expansion out of just the specific trauma therapy space into full wellness, because I think that our lives are so dynamic in all realms. You can eat properly, but if you're not exercising, you're missing part of the game, right? And if you're eating properly and exercising, but you're not taking care of, your mental kind of status and taking downtime and rest time and things like that, then you're missing, some of the portions too. So really, Hope and Healing is like a large umbrella, and I really appreciate what you've done there. With regards to me, I live in South Carolina right now, a little South Kakalaki, and I am the father of two children. My daughter just turned 16, your niece, and my nephew will be 13 next month on the 28th, 4 days after your birthday. So don't forget, listeners, to wish Jennifer a happy birthday next month on the 24th, June. And right now I'm, working in the corporate world as a full-time job as a contractor for B&W. I got my college education, bachelor's degree, master's degree, and that pays the bills. But really what I'm enjoying right now is I'm pretty into CrossFit. I'm a level 2 CrossFit coach at the local YMCA, as well as another gym called CrossFit Prevail. And while the fitness is great, and I love pushing myself, and we can talk about how that leads into our larger topic that we discussed, was resiliency. As a coach, I really love to see people break through self-induced mental barriers. And that's in the fitness world, but that's in life in general. Like, we create these limitations in our mind, whether it's somebody wanting to strike out on business or, start their own business or whatever it may be. And all of a sudden we allow our ego to get involved, and our ego to try to protect us, and we don't take those risks. In my world, it's fitness, and it's I don't think I can lift that kind of weight up. I don't think I can go as fast on those burpees, whatever it may be. And when I'm able to push people a little bit, and then they push past that barrier, and I could see it in their eyes, like, wow, I just lifted that up. Wow, I didn't think I could get that time. That is rewarding to me, because I love to see people fulfill their potential. So that's kind of what I'm doing now. And also, I'm in recovery from substance abuse. September will be 5 years, so just over 4.5 years now from my last drink of alcohol. And within that community, I'm currently the coach of two people, but the organization that I was coaching with kind of changed their model. And so I'm not taking on any more coachees, but I work with a lot of other friends of mine that are in recovery from substance abuse. And then quite a bit, I guess it just runs in the family, because a lot of people come to me with their problems and talk and want advice from me and things like that. And it's not necessarily professional advice. It's more like my life experience and what I've gone through through and how I got through some difficult times, which I have no shortage of difficulty over the last several years. So that's who I am, sis.
Well, I guess it's my turn to share my pride in you because I appreciate all the things that you said about my business and all that stuff. But watching you over the course of my life struggle with substances, has not been easy because there is that mindset of just stop, like just stop doing it. You can see the train coming down the tracks, just move off the tracks. But I'd like you to tell a little bit about that story of how you found yourself in CrossFit because I think that is a really it's a new thing for us up here because in our community we don't have recovery in the wellness space the way that you have it in South Carolina, and I think it's fabulous. But the fact that you're coming up on 5 years and the transformation that has happened in your life. And I was actually doing a training earlier today on a trauma certification that I'm doing, and the trainer was talking about the fact that when people move past whatever it is that they are recovering from, they are not the same person that they were when they started that journey. It is a transformation, and it's been really amazing to watch your transformation and to see that CrossFit is what took you through that. And so maybe you can just share a little bit about how you found CrossFit in the process of your recovery, your early recovery.
Yeah, and thank you for all that. I appreciate that. I totally agree. I mean, everybody's always changing throughout life. Every experience that we have, good or bad, somehow in some degree modifies us as a person and changes the way that maybe we react to similar situations in the future. Sometimes good, sometimes bad. So, and yes, I look back at the person that I was, um, you know, 5 years ago, and man, it's a totally different Brian sitting in this chair right now, and I'm thankful for that, and I attribute that to my higher power, how I define that. So how I found CrossFit, I was always a relatively active and athletic person. From whether it was playing some sports in high school, the military, I played recreational sports, but we also had physical training on a regular basis. Going back to college, playing sports there. I was always like an athletic person. I always loved it. I was never the first picked, but I was never the last picked. People knew that I'll call myself a utility fielder because I could always be okay enough to be good for the team. And, life just took me down a path where I was letting my ego, like I was really, really on top of I was allowing my ego to drive me through most of my life. I was always chasing money. I was always chasing a promotion. Even the MBA, and the master's degree and the finance undergraduate, that was really just chasing money, not necessarily a passion that I wanted to go after. I'm good at numbers. I can crunch those. And as life got harder and life challenged me, I was always a big partier, right? It was the weekends. If it was family gatherings, it's like, hey man, let's tie one on. Let's grab some beers. Let's take some shots, and I kind of was able to maintain that for a long time. But given increased life challenges, whether it's, relationship, marital issues, job issues, all those stresses, raising kids, all those things, and I had just not developed emotionally mature enough to be able to handle my stress and handle it properly and healthful in a healthy manner. I didn't have outlets except for alcohol. And it was, hey, I've had a really stressful day. Let me grab a beer. Hey, I just had a really big win at work. Let's have a beer. We just had a fight at home. I'm going to have a beer. And because of all those stresses mounting up and mounting up and mounting up, and my body aging and not being able to handle the intake of alcohol, my hangovers got worse and worse and worse. And just in summary, it got to the point towards the end that I was waking up and drinking in the morning, not because I wanted to drink, but because I didn't want to physically feel the way that I was feeling. The anxiety, the physical pain, the physical nausea, I didn't want that. And I knew if I just had a little bit of alcohol, it would make me feel better. And it does for a short period of time. And then I just had enough. I was sick and tired of being sick and tired in, late September of 2019. I just realized this is not going to end well if I continue down this path. I'm throwing my life away right now. And it was scary, very scary to to take something out of my life that had been so integral a part of my life. It was part of my persona. I was Brian, the heavy drinker, around all my fraternity brothers and rugby buddies and lacrosse buddies and everybody. Brian was the heavy drinker. You knew that Brian was going to go out and have a good time, and he was going to crack jokes and be loud and obnoxious, and it was going to be kind of funny, sometimes kind of cringy, but hey, he was a nice guy. And that was me. And then I'm taking something out that I don't know who Brian is after that. So for the first year, which quickly became the pandemic in 2020, I actually got into yoga for the first year, and I was doing hot yoga 4 or 5 times a week. Had tried CrossFit in like 2016, but I hurt my back. Now, that was also in the midst of me drinking a lot and smoking a couple packs of cigarettes a day and just living unhealthily. And so for the first year I did yoga, and then I started going to the YMCA just lifting, and I would see them doing CrossFit, and I was very intimidated. So I backed off and finally went back in 2020. Fell in love with the community. Much like the recovery community, you need people around you to push you, to compete with, to just build community. I mean, we're a social creature. In 2021, an organization called the Phoenix Multisport was introduced to the Greenville area, and it's a nationwide organization headquartered out of Denver, Colorado. They have a flagship gym up in Boston as well, and it's a sober, active community. It's a lot of different activities. I specialize in CrossFit with them, but they have rock climbing and mountain biking and creative writing and meditation and hiking and camping and all these other things. And I was fortunate enough that they also have very good partnership with CrossFit headquarters. And I was given the opportunity to get my level 1 CrossFit certification in December of 2021 and began coaching for them as well as for the local YMCA in January of 2022. And I've been coaching ever since. And recently they gave me a scholarship to go get my level 2 coaching certification with CrossFit. And like you said, CrossFit has given me an outlet for a lot of my stress, going through some of the things that I've gone through the last couple of years with, extended unemployment, a lack of job prospects, despite me desiring to work very, very hard. Please give me a job. I will work. Yeah, I don't get called, and that's very humbling. And it can lead you down a path of depression, other things, relationship issues, all those things. But the gym was always there, and I was always able to go in and work out and beat myself up, for lack of a better term, because in the middle of a very hard CrossFit workout, I'm talking CrossFit, it could be anything, but in the middle of a very hard workout, most of the time you don't have the mental capacity to think about anything else besides just doing one more rep or just run a little bit further or just lift a little bit more weight. And I get done with it and my head's clear, and I'm able to get that energy out of my body, because it's, our emotions are basically just stored energy in our body, and we're able to get those out. So fortunately, yes, CrossFit has been one of the pinnacles of my recovery and my resiliency. And it's taught me a lot about life in general and how to get through hard times.
One of the really interesting things about the Phoenix and the program that you coach at is that it's free for the people that participate in your classes. I know this, our listeners don't. You teach a class at 1 o'clock on Sundays, and the cost is 48 hours of sobriety. And it's a honor system, but realistically, if you tied one on Saturday night, you're not coming to do CrossFit on Sunday. So,
Ooh, that would hurt.
you can, right? So the cool thing is that somebody has to decide on Friday, right around now, right? We're recording midday on Friday. I have to decide: am I going to CrossFit on Saturday or Sunday, or am I drinking this weekend? Am I using substances this weekend? And we all have that thing that's going to push us through to the next thing. Like you were talking about in the middle of a workout, I can't think of anything else besides that next mile, that next weight, that next rep, that next whatever it is. And there's things in our lives too that we have to say, if I do this thing, then what is the butterfly effect going to be? And a lot of times that's what resilience can be, that, right? Because it's our ability to say no or to say yes to things in the face of adversity and push through that adversity. And I love the fact that the mindset behind the Phoenix is it costs you your sobriety, 48 hours. Come in, be clean, be sober, come work out. And then it pushes people towards that next thing.
Yeah. And it's 48 hours. So that's that's 2 days, right? I was just talking to someone that I had met in the gym called me this morning. I've talked to him before. He had shared with me, his struggles with alcohol that he's currently still struggling with. You know, I had mentioned how much time I had, and I said, and it gets daunting because you think about events in the future that, whether it's a wedding or whatever it may be, and you're like, God, I can't believe if I quit drinking, I'm not gonna be able to drink there. And I said, fortunately, you don't have to worry about then. You don't have to worry about that date. That's 3 days. You have to worry about right now. That's it. And that goes back to, and I honestly, I mean, I believe for me, my CrossFit journey is a metaphor for life, because just like in the middle of, we did Grace yesterday, and Grace is 30 clean and jerks. For men, it's 135. I did it in 2 minutes and 21 seconds. But I did it one rep at a time, right? You have to complete these things one rep at a time. And I couldn't think of, oh my God, I have 29 more to go. Oh my God, I have 28 more to go. It was 1, 2, 3, and just adding on top of that. And just like, recovery from substance abuse, or whether it's getting through anything that you have in life that is a struggle, you don't have to think about next week or next month or next year. You need to think about this moment right here. What can I control right in this moment right now? And I can't think about my mistakes from the past because they're already done. I can do nothing about those mistakes, but I can change my behavior right in this moment. And for CrossFit, that is keep pushing, do one more rep. For, substance abuse, it is, I'm not going to drink right in this moment and I'm having an urge, so I'm going to do X, Y, or Z, which are my personal tools to get past these cravings. Whether that is, I need to call somebody, I need to go for a walk, I need to journal, I need to meditate, I need to pray, whatever those things are that each individual person uses. It's that moment right then and there. And, even for your work, folks that are dealing with trauma, I mean, I'm sure I can only imagine some of the trauma that folks have go through and what they deal with. And in that particular moment when they're experiencing that, they have to stop and pause and go back to the tools, and we build a toolbox for our recovery. And it's our resiliency toolbox. What are those tools that I have that I can get through this moment of difficulty? And know that everything's impermanent. Everything. Bad times are going to go away. Your good times are going to go away too. Enjoy the good times. Don't cling to them. And, experience the bad times. Don't avert from them. Don't try to push them away because they're going to cling to you. Just know that you're going through it and it's impermanent. And I don't know. I tie everything back to CrossFit because in the middle of that, these workouts, it's like, this isn't going to last forever. It sucks right now, but it's not going to last forever. So I'm going to keep pushing forward. And then you get to the other side of whatever trial or tribulation or workout, whatever it is, right? You get to the other side of that trial, that difficulty, and you get through it. And you get through it with health and dignity and respect for yourself and give yourself grace. And then you look back and you go, wow, never thought I could get through that. I mean, 5 years ago, on September 18th of 2019, when I had my last drink, I could not have imagined Brian Adkins would be sitting where Brian Adkins is sitting, going through all the difficulties that I went through. But it shaped me to be the person that I am today, that I'm extremely proud of who I am. And I find a lot of humility and gratitude that people come to me. These friends of mine, they come to me when they're going through hard times, asking me things, because that shows me that, wow, buddy, you learned from your own difficulties. Because again, I'm not given some textbook definition of this is the things that you do. That all has its values as well. I'm given, hey, this is what happened to me. This is how we're related. This is how our situation's related. And this is what got me through it. Now, each of us have our own job in this, right? Nobody can recover for me. Nobody can stay sober for me. Nobody can do the workouts for me. It's me and me alone. I have to walk this path. No one's coming to save me. And so I can give all the advice to folks and tell them examples, but they have to walk that path then. And sometimes that path sucks and it's hard.
Well, and I want to just make sure our listeners are remembering we're talking about it, addiction and recovery, and we're talking about CrossFit, but we're talking about life. We're talking about things happen in life. As I work through my fill in the blank, I'm going to be resilient and I'm going to use fill in the blank of whatever tool that is. And you actually just listed off all the things that have worked for you in recovery from substance abuse are all the things that we talk about in this office that I'm sitting in right now with my clients: prayer, exercise, meditation, breath work, feeding and fueling your body, right? All of those things are the tools that we have. And people say, "Oh, well, can I just do this and it'll help?" Well, it's going to help. You're going to have extra tools, because there's probably days where actually I know there are days when you're like, "Man, I'm really feeling stressed and the gym is closed," or the kids have something going on and you don't have time to go get a workout in. So this is when I open up my toolbox, and then I'm going to say, okay, I'm going to get a workout in this time, but right now I need to use prayer, breath work, meditation, journaling, some other thing that I can use in this moment. And so many times we're thinking ahead of that next event, that next thing, that next obstacle, that next celebration, that next whatever, and we just missed opportunities to create muscle memory of, when I'm in a stressful situation, I'm going to not think about the future, not think about the past, because our mistakes are our mistakes. And what really matters is, what are we going to do about it? Are you going to just sit and think about the mistake and then let other people just ruminate about the bad things that happened? Or are you going to pick yourself up and keep on going? And, I joke sometimes because, Dad used to say to me all the time, "Come on, suck it up, soldier." And I'll jokingly say to my kids or to mom sometimes, "Suck it up, buttercup." And it's not so much that it's a negative connotation of, just suck it up. But it's, okay, this is life. This is what it is. Now, what are you gonna do about it? And that is part of resiliency, right? Life has thrown you something. I tell my clients all the time, life has dealt you a deck of cards. You've had no control over some of those cards that you've dealt. Some of them you passed back and you got a few not so good ones, or you got some better ones. But now, what are you going to do about it? And when we build resilience, we are pushing through those hard times and gaining more strength on the other side of it.
Yeah, I equate it. I draw all these correlations to CrossFit just because it's a part of my life. We build muscle. Our bodies build muscle. The physical process of building muscle is you lifting a weight, which slightly tears your muscles. Your body sends an inflammatory response that builds that muscle back slightly. So you have to tear your muscle a little bit. And I'm not talking about a hamstring tear, like a big tear. Those little fibers need to tear, then they need to be repaired. And over time, muscle builds. And it's the same thing with life, that we have to go through difficult times to build strength. There was a story about, I want to call it the biosphere, but it's something else. It's like that thing out in, I guess, Arizona or Nevada that the scientists built, right? And it's an enclosed structure, and they planted trees and all this stuff, and it was enclosed. They lived there for a year or two. No one in, no one out. They lived there. And they realized that as the trees grew, the trees would start to slump over, and they would fall down. And they couldn't understand why, until they realized that there was no wind. There was no wind in the biosphere. So the trees and the fibers of the trees, we can call it their muscles, were never tested and never made strong, because the tree never moved to have to bounce back to upright. And so they had to artificially blow wind into this thing to make these trees strong. And that's the same thing with us. If you live a life of ease for too long, your first difficulty is going to send you down a terrible path, because you don't know how to get through things. You don't know how to, whether it's those tools. And one tool that I think we always underestimate is the power of a good friggin' cry. And I have learned that. And as a man, I've had to learn, Brian, right now is a really good time for you to turn on some sad music, maybe Sarah McLachlan's Angel, and cry your eyes out for 10, 15 minutes. Now, I do it by myself, right? I'll be in my car. I'll pull into a back park in a Walmart or something, turn on the music, and just cry my eyes out. That's one of those tools also that we can use. But we have to be able to get through hard times and know that it's going to suck. We're in the middle of it. And if you try to push it away and not deal with it and just stifle your emotions or distract yourself, right? I think there's good distraction and bad distraction, but just never try to deal with something, you're not going to grow your resiliency muscles at all. and you're going to stumble at every single one of life's challenges. And I say that because I did that. I stumbled at every single one of life's challenges. And for me, I always resorted back to the bottle. And then when I came to out of my, bender, my problems were still there. And I made a whole bunch more problems. And putting that down and having the mental clarity over the last several years, man, I have gone through, like I said, the painfulness of losing my job, the humility of not being able to get another job after having an MBA and a 20-year career and leadership and running a business, like all of these resume items, and nobody even called me. I applied. Nobody even called me. That's very humbling, and I had to deal with that. The breakup of a marriage, trying to navigate shared custody, financial woes, all of these things, the death of our father that slapped me right in the face when I was not expecting to have to deal with one more challenge, and much less a major challenge like that. But I got through them, and I'm getting through those. And some days are hard. Some days it bounces back, whether it's dad's passing, that it's just like, oh, wow, okay, it's going to hit me in the face today. I'm going to cry a lot today. Or whether it's, whatever it is, I've built those muscles, and I'm like, okay, I'm gonna keep one foot in front of the other. I don't have to worry about next week, next year right now. I need to tune it back, and I need to think about this moment right now. What can I do in this moment? Just before this podcast, I'm dealing with stuff at work. My heart rate, my blood pressure's up, and I said, you know what? I need to take a couple minutes. And I sat down right behind me. You can't see it here because it's off camera, but I have a little meditation platform. And I sat down and I meditated. And it wasn't a good meditation. I was breathing. I could feel my heart rate still racing. But by the end of it, I just felt just a little bit better. And that's really what we want, right? We don't necessarily always need to be, hey, I'm feeling bad, and I want to go from bad to extremely happy immediately. That's not going to happen, folks. What you do get is you get incremental changes, and those incremental changes then build up over time. If you're first dealing with this and trying to learn your resiliency and trying to build your resiliency muscles, in the beginning, you're going to feel like, man, I'm not making any progress. I'm not. That's how you do it in the gym. You don't go into the gym for the first time in 6 years and you bench press and you're like, oh wow, boom, boom, and your pecs pop out and now you can bench press 300 pounds. That ain't how it works. And I tell my athletes in CrossFit, like, especially the new ones, keep coming back. Okay, because you're making incremental changes that you can't see, but in 6 months we're gonna repeat a workout, and you're gonna do it faster or lift heavier weights, and it's gonna blow your mind because you didn't see your gains. And it's the same thing with life's trials and tribulations and our resiliency. In the moment, we think, I barely got through that. I don't know how I got through that, but the next time you face something like that, all that stuff in your subconscious that you built up is kicking in a little bit. And there's a little less tears, and there's a little less stress, and you're able to get through it more. And I'm able to take a lot of things that life hands me now. I really am. So I'm thankful for life's challenges. It's the
Well, and
thought of, this isn't happening to me, this is happening for me, right? It's that slight shift in mentality to say, okay, if this is happening for me, that means I need to learn something from this. And it's going to suck, but I need to learn from this. So that's what I'm going to look for throughout this. As I navigate this difficult time, what is it teaching me? And in the end, if you keep that mindset and that open mind about what you're trying to learn, it sends it to you. The universe, God, whatever, however you want to classify it, shows you what you have learned.
well, and there's so much about our mindset. I mean, I feel like we could do like a whole series on mindset and talk for hours about mindset, because basically what you think is going to happen is going to happen. What you look for, you will find. And so you were talking about, all the various tools that people use and things like that. Your meditation wasn't the best meditation today, but it helped you because you recognized this is what I need right now. And if somebody sits down to breathe or to pray or to meditate or whatever it is, and the whole time they're thinking this isn't going to work, well, then it's not going to work. But if you sit down and let it be what it's going to be, then you're going to feel I mean, a tiny bit better is a tiny bit better, because the next time you sit down, you're going to be that tiny bit better going into it. So again, lifting weights, right? I'm going to lift 5-pound weights today. Maybe I'm on 8-pound weights next week, right? So now I'm already higher weights, and then I'm going to go to 10s and 12s. I know CrossFit people don't lift little tiny weights like that, but you know, we got to start small. Um, and we have to sometimes recognize that it gets worse before it gets better. Sometimes, I mean, your early recovery did not get better. Life did not get better right away. There were lots of struggles, lots of trials, lots of tribulations, and that happens. You know, I talk with clients that I work with who are healing from trauma, and they have this the metaphoric, you know, band-aid that they're getting ready to rip off. It's going to hurt, and it's going to bleed, and it's going to ooze, and it's going to be nasty and gross, but it has to do that in order to get better. And we have to cry, we have to yell, we have to lift heavy weights and sweat and go through the pains of life because it's going to get worse before it gets better for sure.
It does. I walked into a 12-step meeting in January of 20 because 2 days prior to that, I had been laid off again from my corporate job. And it was 3 weeks after our father passed away unexpectedly, and it rocked my world. And I cried very much. And those poor people, like, I let loose emotionally on those people. And one of the things that I could not understand was I could not understand why life had handed me so much stuff during my substance abuse. And yet I get sober and I start doing the right thing. And life has handed me challenge after challenge after challenge after challenge after challenge. And I just didn't understand why. But as I reflect back on it, I realized that these challenges needed to happen. And God forbid they had happened when I was actively using, I would probably be dead. I would probably be dead because I would have resorted to drugs and alcohol to deal with my pain and my suffering, and I would have overdone it. And so now I have the ability to go through these things, and it has not been easy, man. I mean, it has not been easy. I will say that it almost develops some type of, I don't want to minimize some of the other clinical terms like PTSD and things like that, but I mean, I still find myself waiting for the shoe to drop. Like, what bad thing is going to happen to me next? And I have to get over that. That's one of those things. I talk a big game on this thing, right? We've talked about a lot of things and all this resiliency, but I'm not perfect. And I'm helping a friend of mine navigate like a separation right now. He stayed at my house last night because he can't stay at his house, and he's dealing with all of these emotions. And I try to remind him as I'm giving him advice. He's like, "Oh, that's so good." I'm like, "Yeah, but buddy, I'm not perfect at it. Like, I'm telling you to think about impermanence and all these things, but I have to do it too. Like, it helps remind me because I have moments that I think too far into the future. And what happens if this happens? And then I can go down a mental pathway of catastrophic thinking 3 years out into the future and be like, what am I doing right now? I don't need to think about this. I'm not perfect, and I'm still building on these things and still going through, trials, and I'll go through it until the day I die, which is hopefully, I'll be 50 this year. Hopefully that's. Mom says that she wants to live to like 100 or something. I don't know if I want to live that long. So I'm not saying that I got another 50 years, but look, I have a little bit of time left, and I'm still going to go through trials, and I'm still going to go through, bad times. But I also know I'm going to have good times, right? You can't have light without dark. You can't have pain without joy. You can't, like, life is about balance. It's about having these two things that are diametrically opposed and you getting to experience both of them. And the bad sucks, but the good really, really is joyful. And the degree to which you appreciate the joy is the degree to which you can tolerate the bad. If you recognize that everything's impermanent, it's all going to go away.
Well, and we don't realize how good the good is unless we experience the bad. I
Exactly.
mean, we just don't. We have to experience those extremes in order to understand how good the good really is, and to be able to settle in somewhere in the middle, because life is not all roses and rainbows, and sometimes it's just the monotony. I talk to my clients sometimes, my older clients. I talk about the game of life, right? The board game. Sometimes you just go onto a square and it's just a red square and there's nothing happening. Sometimes you go on the square and you've won the lottery, and sometimes you go on the square and you just had your house foreclosed on, right? Like, there's variations of what's happening. My little kids that we work with, we use chutes and ladders. Sometimes you're going up the ladder, sometimes you're falling down the chute, sometimes you're just on a square, and that's how life is. Lots of ups and downs, but you have to understand the downs in order to appreciate the ups.
Yeah, I mean,
So
people in San Diego don't necessarily appreciate a nice sunny day because it's always sunny there. But people in England really appreciate that sunny day. And the people in
yeah,
England aren't that down when it rains because it rains all the time there. But people in San Diego are like, I can't believe it's raining today, and they can let it ruin their day, right? We have to have both sides of the coin to truly appreciate life in general. And it's a crazy
yeah,
wild ride that we get to sit on this little, insignificant planet or an insignificant star on the outer banks of a very small galaxy in this infinite universe. And we are insignificant and precious and unique at the same time. And we get to enjoy it. And when we get through a tough CrossFit workout and you lay on the floor sweating and panting and you go, wow, I got through it. It's the same as getting through a life trial, getting through it. Wow, I got through it. That's my correlation between CrossFit and life. I love it, and I'll keep doing it until my joints blow out, which is fast approaching.
well, I mean, you are going to be 50 this year, so
This is
you've got
true.
that
This is
going
true.
for
I'm
you.
not getting any younger.
Yeah. Well, I really have loved this conversation, and I know that we were talking before we hit record that you have your own podcast that kind of went into some dormancy stage that might be coming up again. Maybe you and I can jump on a podcast in the fall here again on the wing space, because I think that there's a lot to talk about and unload. And hey, we're siblings and we can talk all day long, so who knows if anybody wants to listen to it, but maybe we'll do it anyway and see what happens.
This is true. Yeah, I
Yeah,
jokingly said I'm not that much of a talker before we started because you didn't write down any questions, and I jokingly said, yeah, that's going to be a problem because I'm not a talker, and I think your listeners can tell that that is far from the truth. But I think that, at this point in my life, I talk less to just talk, and I talk, and hopefully somebody hears something that helps them, because ultimately, whether it's my CrossFit, whether it's the recovery community, whether it's a friend coming to me, I'm hoping that what I'm saying is helping somebody, because that's what I ultimately want to do. I want to help the people live their best life. However I can contribute to them living their best life, I find a lot of gratitude in that. So I appreciate you
yeah,
having me on. This was really fun. I'm always available to discuss any topic at hand. So if whenever you need me, I'd love to jump back on. And I think it's time for a reboot of our podcast that you did on mine. It's called Recovery Rising. Your listeners can find 27 episodes that I recorded around the 2020 to 2021 timeframe. And like you said, it went into dormancy, but I've plans to relaunch it very soon. So maybe we can jump back on there, even revisit our topic at the time, which was grief. And we talked about
grief.
the passing of Aunt Nanny. And you and I have experienced major grief since December 23rd of 2022. So maybe we could just talk about that or talk about whatever we want on my podcast. But thank you so much for having me, Jen.
Yeah, great to have you. And listeners, if you have questions or you want to just drop a comment, you can reach me, Jennifer at hopehealingtherapy.com. Be sure to follow Hope and Healing on Instagram and Facebook. And appreciate you listening, and I hope you have a great day.